Well, it's all downhill from here. At least, that's what everybody says. Is the second half of this game really that bad? I actually like the late game areas of Dark Souls quite a bit. Every area in the game presents new kinds of challenges, and every level has its own distinct identity. None of them are bland or boring. With the right mindset, you can learn to appreciate the design of these levels, and maybe learn to enjoy Dark Souls 1 in a new way. Before I start talking about any of the late game levels individually, I would like to point out that you can choose to play these levels in any order. Also, most of these areas can be accessed early to an extent. Being able to make your own route through the game is one of the main things I like about Dark Souls. You could reasonably play the late game in any order. There's no obvious best first choice to go to. Melee characters will probably go to Anor Londo first, Faith characters will go to Tomb of the Giants, and if you just want a lot of souls really fast, you might go to Lost Izalith. You can also choose to leave any level and come back later pretty easily, since you can warp between certain bonfires at this point. This is the structure of the late game. 4 linear paths that you can choose in any order. Let's get into the individual levels now and show why they're actually good. Duke's Archives. One thing that every level in Dark Souls has is a unique identity. What I mean is, every level has its own kinds of challenges, whether it's a poison lake in Blight Town or the abundance of traps in Sin's Fortress. As for the Duke's Archives, there's the puzzle with the rotating stairs, glass cannon versions of the hollow enemies that can also be buffed further by the channelers, and the prison break sequence. The fact that late game areas still manage to challenge players in new ways is definitely a good thing. Consider this. Would Dark Souls be improved if the late game areas were easier? Would they be better if they were more straightforward combat challenges? The answer comes down to personal taste, but I personally love when games challenge me in new and interesting ways. Especially when games manage to do that throughout an entire playthrough. Anyway, the Duke's Archives manages to have some challenging encounters like the Boar Hallway, the big room with the channeler in the middle, and the Crystal Soldier NPC right before Seath. The section where you have to break out of jail isn't difficult, but still fun enough. The Slug Women add good variety to the area, and it's interesting that they're all contained within this prison section. The outside area with the Crystal Golems is a nice change of scenery too. Even though I don't always go through the NPC quests when I replay this game, I think they still add some depth to each level. You can find Logan here in the jail, and buy his spells if you're a mage. His quest will end once you buy all his spells. Sieglin appears in the garden with all the golems. She will progress Siegmeyer's quest if you free her. And there's also Rhea. One possible ending for her quest makes her end up hollow in the archives. So I don't really see any problems with this level. The intentional death when you fight Seath here might bother some people, but is it really a bad thing? It shows Seath's immortality, and let's be honest, nobody's getting this far on most playthroughs without dying anyway. Before we move on, I would like to say that, aesthetically, I really like this area. There's nothing to really explain with that. You can see it and you either like it or you don't. And I happen to like it. The Duke's Archives was good the whole time. But what about the level that comes after it? Crystal Cave. Nobody can deny that this area looks great, but is it actually fun? Here's why I like it. The invisible bridges are a unique challenge for this game. The mandatory bridges are straight lines, which makes it kind of easy once you figure it out. There is an optional crooked bridge though, so they did push this kind of obstacle a little further. And the reward for getting across the crooked bridge is pretty good too. It's a blue slab. Before the DLC came out, this was the only guaranteed blue slab in the game, and the DLC only added one more. I do understand why some players might not like the invisible bridges. It's a kind of challenge that's fundamentally different from combat challenges, and the punishment for failure is instant death. But I would say, it's just another kind of trap. It's a kind of trap that doesn't appear anywhere else in the game. Like I said before, Dark Souls continues to challenge you in new ways even in the late game. Is the new challenge executed well here? I would say yes. Also, This area is pretty short. It serves the purpose of giving the Seath boss fight some stakes. If you die, you have to go through the entirety of the Crystal Cave to get back. Is that necessarily bad though? Let's think about it. Would the Crystal Cave be improved if there was a bonfire in it right before Seath, or a shortcut to skip most of it? I'd say it's appropriate for late game areas to punish you harder for dying. And that's exactly what all the Lord Soul bosses do. Late game bosses in Dark Souls 1 aren't as difficult as the late game bosses from Elden Ring, but they punish you harder for dying. This is a common trait they all have in this game, so clearly it was designed this way intentionally. Quickly, I'll talk about the enemies here. The Crystal Golems make sense, but they aren't much of a threat. I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, but it is pretty easy to just run past everything. There's some Moonlight Butterflies you can technically fight, but honestly, they're just here for decoration, and to show that they have a connection with Seath. There's a few crystal lizards hidden here too, so you can potentially get a bunch of useful items here, and probably max out a special weapon. Then there's the clams. They only appear here and in the secret area, Ash Lake. They only appear in areas associated with the ancient dragons. I believe that Seath went to Ash Lake as part of his goal to become immortal, and took some of the clams back with him. But that's enough about lore speculation. The clams themselves are different from any other enemy in the game, and they're a good addition to this area. They add some good variety here. As for the boss himself, Seath, I think he's alright. At this point in the game, you may or may not have a maxed out weapon, but Seath usually isn't as difficult as the other Lord Soul bosses anyway. Technically, he can curse you, which instantly kills you and cuts your max HP in half. So he is somewhat threatening if you aren't prepared for that. He looks really cool, and you can also cut his tail off for a secret weapon. I think he's a pretty fun boss. Overall, the Duke's Archives and the Crystal Caves are a good set of levels. I think the only other thing that could be seen as bad design is the crystal that you can kinda slide off of. It's not hard to avoid once you know it's there though. It's a trap that works consistently, and you can learn to adapt to it quickly. I can see why some people would consider this a flaw, but to me, it's just another trap. And it makes sense within the world. Bottom line, these levels are good. Catacombs. Technically you can go here right after you get to Firelink Shrine, but I usually go down this path after I get the Lord Vessel. The new mechanic in this level is the reviving skeletons. You have to kill the necromancers to make the skeletons stop coming back to life. Some are hidden or a little hard to reach, but they don't respawn once you kill them. If you manage to hunt them all down, you'll get a guaranteed Skull Lantern drop. If you're lucky, you could get it early as a rare drop from one of them, so it's definitely worth going after those guys. The secrets in the Catacombs are what make it one of my favorite levels in the entire game. First of all, there's a hidden bonfire halfway down the level. Nice. There's also the hidden blacksmith, Vamos. If you go here early, you can get really overpowered for the early game. You can also find the Dark Moon Seance Ring, which is only partially hidden. But hey, I think it's cool. And finally, there's the hidden Gravelord Covenant. You have to sit in this coffin for 30 seconds or so, then you can go join the Gravelords. You even get a cool sword for your trouble. All of that is nice, but the most substantial secret of all in my opinion, is the fact that you can skip 90% of the level by falling down at certain points. There's so much to do here, but you can also bypass most of it if you know how. There's nothing that really sticks out as bad to me in this level. Can you get surprised by the whale skeletons? Yeah, but they also die in 1 or 2 hits. If you know what you're doing, they aren't hard to avoid either. I think the most common criticism of the Catacombs is that the boss is too easy. Pinwheel is undeniably easy, especially if you come here after Anor Londo. The lower difficulty does make early trips to the Tomb of Giants more feasible, but I think he was a little too easy, even on an early game character. Does that make the fight bad though? I don't think it does. I'm not saying it's a great fight or anything, but at least he has a cool design and good music. The Catacombs is an awesome area. Tomb of the Giants. This is definitely one of the more controversial levels. Half of the level is dark with bottomless pits, and they're strong enemies. I actually like this, but before I get into gameplay stuff, let's talk about atmosphere. The Tomb of the Giants is always threatening. Sure, if you know where to go already, you can run through the whole dark section easily, but it takes work to get that good. The dark section is difficult and even has a sad NPC quest. Rhea, the priestess, is stuck down here. She was tricked by Patches and shoved off a cliff, along with her 2 bodyguards. They went hollow and will try to kill you on sight. You can see Lost Izalith and Ash Lake in the distance too, which adds some nice visual diversity to the level. The last section is a cave that's actually lit up. An NPC can evade you here on the cliff right by the entrance. Then there's some pinwheel clones and infinitely respawning skeleton babies that give the toxic status. Long story short, this place is no joke. Anyway, the thing people are critical of in this level is the dark section. It can be frustrating to die to something you didn't see coming, but is it really that bad? If you die before you reach the bonfire, you might have a lot of backtracking to do. Imagine you missed the hidden bonfire halfway into the Catacombs. Yeesh. Well, I would say that sticking the bonfire a little bit into the level, rather than right at the start, actually enhances the atmosphere of it. You have to press forward very carefully until you hit the checkpoint. Isn't this difficulty and pressure appropriate for a late game area? There's a few different ways to deal with the darkness. A spell that is admittedly not very easy to find. The Skull Lantern, which takes up a weapon slot, but also is conveniently found within the level itself. And then there's the Sunlight Maggot, which is easily the best option. It's a helmet that permanently lights up the area around you. It also leaves both your arms free, so you can keep your shield equipped, or keep two-handing your weapon. Of course, you could always just carefully inch forward in the dark too. You probably won't get lost since the dark section isn't that long anyway. Really, I don't see a problem with the darkness. Would the level be improved if there was a bonfire right at the start? Or if it wasn't dark at all? Or if they removed the bottomless pits? I appreciate the higher difficulty here. And I like that the level has its own unique kind of challenge, just like the other late game levels all have. I also like how the best way to deal with the darkness is found in a separate late game area. That's another factor that affects the order you'll play the late game levels in. Now, what about the boss, Nito? He has a bunch of respawning skeletons that fight with him. If you stay at the front of the arena, you only aggro a couple of the weaker ones. There's more skeletons in the back, and some of them are giants. You can permanently kill them with a divine weapon, but I usually just let Nito kill them for me over and over. Nito has a few straightforward attacks, sword swings, and an explosion move. But there's one attack that's pretty satisfying to dodge. He stabs his sword into the ground, and it comes up from underneath you. He will scream when he's about to do it, so there's a sound cue as well. This is one of the better late game bosses if you ask me. He's got a unique concept, he's challenging, and there's some interesting strategies you can use with stealth, divine weapons, and how deep you go into the arena. New Londo. Unlike the other levels in this video, this one can be fully completed before you place the Lord Vessel. If you manage to do this, you can unlock late game weapon upgrades, join a secret covenant, and get a new perspective on the story. New Londo is split in half. There's the top half that's above the water, and the second half that opens up once you unplug the drain. Top half has a bunch of ghosts, which are immune to damage unless you're cursed. You either have to use a consumable item, or have the curse status that cuts your HP in half. The ghosts can also move through walls. There's this building you have to go through that's full of ghosts, and you'll get swarmed if you just rush in. There's a clever way to skip the ghost house too. I really like the challenge here. It involves a whole new enemy type, and there's multiple ways to deal with them. There's nothing else like the ghosts, and they really give this level a cool twist. New Londo keeps up with the theme of introducing new kinds of challenges even in the late game. The area that opens up after you clear out the water has more difficult enemies. Dark Wraiths. Their sword swings are strange. They remind me of the weird attacks that certain Punch-Out characters do. They also have a grab attack that can drain your humanity. There's some big slimes here too, which adds some nice variety. This level isn't hated nearly as much as the other late game areas from what I've seen. But what about the boss fight? Before you can even fight the Four Kings, you need the ring from Sif. Part of the gimmick of this boss is that one of your precious ring slots is occupied. Also, more clones of the boss will spawn over time. You need to kill each one quickly so you don't get overwhelmed by a bunch of bosses at once. The actual moveset itself is good too. The sword swings are telegraphed nicely. There's a grab move and a homing projectile as well. The Four Kings is probably my favorite late game boss in Dark Souls. I also want to point out the long run back this boss has. At this point, there's no question. Long run backs were an intentional design choice. The Dark Souls 1 bosses are easier than stuff from Sekiro and Elden Ring, but you get punished harder for dying. New Londo is another great area. It looks cool, there's a unique challenge to it, and you have the option of going through it early. It's my second favorite area in this video, after the Catacombs. Demon Ruins. This level and Lost Izalith tend to get more criticism than the rest of the levels in this video. So, what's wrong with the Demon Ruins? The Taurus demons just standing around might look a little strange, but other than that minor detail, it's a solid level. And yet again, you can come here early right after you beat Quelaag. If you do this, you can get some good fire weapon upgrades, so there is a decent reason to do this. At the start, you have these egg-infested guys. Before they were passive, but now they'll attack you. There's the cool egghead secret too. I like stuff like this. Lava's blocking your path, so all you can do is fight the ceaseless discharge. Demon Ruins and Lost Izalith have 4 boss fights total, plus some NPC invasions, and early bosses returning as normal enemies. But anyway, Ceaseless Discharge is a boss you can fight early because it has a secret easy method. Let it chase you back to the start of the arena and just knock it off the cliff. If you want to though, you can fight it normally. I'm glad that the option is there. After you win the fight, the lava cools down. There's Taurus demons and Capra demons everywhere. I actually enjoy fighting them here. You can see how much stronger you've become since you first fought these guys. They really shouldn't be too challenging at this point. The rest of the level is pretty short, but there's some cool new enemies that show up. The giant worms and the demon statues. The worms can come out of the walls and surprise you. If you go on this side path and get the large fire ember, you might get trapped by these worms. There's even one guarding the bonfire. They're used in a clever way. The demon statues are kinda weak, but they do fire damage. Enemy variety is good in this area. Kirk will invade you here on the cliff too. I don't see any issues here at all, really. What about the boss though? The Demon Fire Sage is locked behind the yellow fog door. It's a reskin of the Asylum Demon, with some new moves. It's pretty much the same as the Stray Demon boss fight, but with more HP. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. It's kind of interesting that the demons have sages though. Right after that, there's a small path and a quick way to get back to Quelaag's domain. There's a hidden covenant here behind an illusory wall. I'm sure everyone knows this, but if you get to rank 2 in the Spider Covenant, you can open this shortcut to Lost Izalith. It can technically be used to skip the Demon Fire Sage too, but it's still behind the yellow fog wall. This lets you save Solaire, skip 2 bosses, and half of Lost Izalith. You can't deny that it's a cool shortcut. It's very well hidden, but it is there. But anyway, if you keep going the normal way, it's a short path to a bonfire, and the next boss, the Centipede Demon. Notice how the 3 bosses in this level have a bonfire placed pretty close to them? The Lord Soul bosses are the ones with longer runbacks, not the regular bosses. The Centipede Demon can actually be seen before you even fight it in the Demon Ruins. Pretty cool, huh? The fight itself takes place in this big room that's full of lava. You can cut off one of the demon's limbs to get a ring for walking on lava, or try to stick to these little islands. It isn't one of my favorite bosses, but I respect the diversity it adds to the boss roster. He has some moves other creatures wouldn't be able to do. And when you cut his arms off, they still attack you. Once you beat him, you get access to Lost Izalith. The Demon Ruins is a solid area. I can see people being annoyed by the Asylum Demon reskin, but I don't mind it personally. The quick succession of boss fights is part of the level's identity, and it makes sense for an Asylum Demon to be here anyway. Lost Izalith. This area is the worst one in the video. Is it totally irredeemable garbage though? No. I'd say only half the level sucks. The lava lake with all the undead dragon hindquarters. If you know where to go and skip all the dragon legs, it's not that bad. There's even a hidden bonfire right at the end of the lava section. There's barely even any treasure in the lava anyway. The jumping dragon legs suck to fight too. I'm not opposed to there being enemy types that you're supposed to avoid rather than fight, but I wish they would have made one more new demon enemy to put in the lava area. Maybe they could have made a buffed variant of a Taurus demon, or a lava monster that can't be damaged. The rest of Lost Izalith is fine though. These Chaos Eater enemies look awesome. The real highlight for me is the NPC quests. Stigmeyer's quest continues here, and you can either help him fight these Chaos Eaters or let him do it himself. He will most likely die if you don't help him, and you can take his stuff. If you do help him, you get a different reward, and his quest will continue for a little bit longer. There's also a maze down here with poison, but it's worth going through if you want a red slab. The other NPC quest is Solaire's. Remember that shortcut I mentioned before? Well, if you go through that early and kill these bugs, you'll save Solaire, making him summonable for the final boss. If you go up to it from the back way, you'll see Solaire going nuts with a bug on his head. You'll have to kill him if you want to use the Sunlight Maggot in the Tomb of the Giants. What I like about the quest here is that you're not just progressing them, there's decisions and failure states. But either way, these are memorable parts of the game. Right before the boss, there's the Fire Witch NPC and the final Kirk invasion. Then, you reach the worst boss in the game, the Bed of Chaos. They tried to do something different here, which I appreciate, but it just wasn't executed well. The floor falling from underneath you really sucks, and getting pushed into the pit by the big hands is not fun. I do like the firebomb trick that lets you skip most of the fight. It's a nice trick, but the intended way to fight the boss still sucks. And it's also a Lord Soul boss, so the run back is long too. If Dark Souls ever gets a full remake, I'd like to see an entirely new take on this encounter. Lost Izalith is not one of my favorite areas. With a few minor adjustments though, it could be another solid late game level. The only bad parts are the lava lake and the boss fight. Kiln of the First Flame. Here's the final level of the game. Looks awesome. The ashes and melted steel make it look like a massive explosion happened here. There isn't much going on. It's just a long boss run back with a handful of black knights in the way. Nobody really complains about this level though. The final boss is criticized for being too easy. Yeah, if you're good at parrying, it's not that hard, but some people might not know that you can parry him. He's fast and he does a lot of damage too, so if you suck at fighting him, you'll have to back off and heal a lot, putting you at a disadvantage. I personally think it's a good final boss. It's kind of low-key. Challenging, but not psychotically hard or anything. The run back is long too. It's more about tension and punishment than a reflex parry challenge that you can try back to back over and over. Once you beat him, there's two endings, and they're both available no matter what. The endings are good, and it's not really clear which one is the good ending, or if there even is a good ending. But yeah, Kiln of the First Flame is a great final level. Is the second half of Dark Souls bad? No. Half of Lost Izalith is bad, and the Bed of Chaos is bad. That's nowhere near half of the game, and those bad sections I mentioned are stuck between a bunch of good sections. Every other late game area is either good or great. The variety of challenge keeps the game interesting. All the areas look cool too. Anor Londo is definitely a high point in the game, but the second half of Dark Souls is still very good, especially when you include the DLC content. Trying to find the game designer's intentions on difficult or strange levels can help you enjoy your favorite games even more. Hopefully this perspective will help you appreciate more games in a new way. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe.